Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and this is my channel, Em Reads, where we talk about books and reading. And today I'm finally filming my little discussion video about To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, which is one of my favorite novels of all time. I've read this novel many times throughout my life and have always found something worthwhile in it. And I just finished another reread of it earlier this summer, which sparked me wanting to do this video. And frankly, I have procrastinated filming this. I have been saying for weeks and weeks that I'm going to do it, but I keep putting it off, partly because I think I know I can't discuss every single aspect of this book in a relatively short booktube video. And so I'm just going to go ahead and put the disclaimer out here that this video is not going to be a full discussion of every single aspect of this book. There will be some aspects I hardly talk about at all, or don't talk about it at all, or anything of that. So this is just me talking about the parts that right now mean a lot to me, or that I find I can talk about. And another little disclaimer out here, I'm titling this a book talk video instead of a book review video because I am not a book reviewer. I'm not a book critic. I don't have an English major. I didn't get a literature degree or master's. I didn't study this subject extensively in college. I didn't take any graduate courses on this. I'm not here to talk about narrative structure or writing technique. There are other people who I'm sure who have done videos on that are wonderful and are better suited to talk about those things than me. This is just me, a woman talking about a book that I love. So I'm very purposefully not calling it a review video. So let's just get that out of the way. If you're looking for that, I know there are other videos out there about this book. But this is just me talking about a book that's important to me and some reasons I love it. And without further ado, let's start talking. Okay, so To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Harper Lee is an Alabamian, and I also live in Alabama. I have my whole life. This book takes place in the fictional town of Macomb, Alabama. I always think it's funny. You can always tell who the Southerners are when they talk about this book, because if they're not a Southerner, they say Macomb, Alabama. And if they are a Southerner, they say Macomb. So the fictional town of Macomb, Alabama. And our narrator is Jean Louise Finch, more commonly known as Scout. And she is a young woman, a young girl in Macomb. She has an older brother, Jim, and her father is Atticus, who is a local lawyer. And this is very much a coming of age story. It's a story about her father. It's about people in a small town and their prejudices and their hypocrisy. It's about justice and when justice fails. It's a story about a lot of things. I always find that there's something really, I'm a little bit biased because I am a Southerner, but to me there is something that's so special about Southern storytelling in particular. There's just something about it that evokes such a very specific sense of place, but that in its humanity feels very universal to me. And I think when it comes to this book in particular, I think that's one of the reasons it's so beloved everywhere, even in other countries from the United States. So this is just truly a very special special novel. But we kind of have two main, I won't say even two main storylines, but two of the main storylines in the book are, first, Scout and her brother Jim kind of have this fascination with a man named Boo Radley, who is a mysterious, reclusive figure in the community who never leaves his home. Scout and Jim have never seen him in the flesh, and they've kind of created all these monstrous urban legends about him, and they very much use him as like a boogeyman type of figure. And so one storyline kind of deals with their fascination with Boo Radley and their attempts to kind of interact with him from a distance or communicate with him from a distance. And the other storyline is the trial of Tom Robinson. Tom Robinson is a black man in the community, and he has been accused of committing a violent crime against a white woman. And Scout's father, Atticus, has been appointed to represent him in his trial. And Scout's father, Atticus, is truly one of my favorite characters in literature ever. He is a single father. His wife passed away many years ago. Scout doesn't really have any memories of her. And as a single father, raising these children mostly on his own, he is trying the best he can to instill virtue and moral character into them. And he very much is cognizant that if he's going to instill it in them, he has to live out that way himself. And Atticus is a man of very firm convictions and very staunchly moral. And one thing that I really love about Atticus is that even though he is very firm and steadfast in his beliefs and his convictions, he's really rather docile. It's just a great demonstration to me that you don't have to be loud or brash or bombastic in order to stand firm in your convictions or to confront others with your convictions. It doesn't require a big personality or anything like that. You can stand firm, but be quiet and humble about it at the same time. And I think that's just a really great thing about Atticus's character, because that's not something we always get in literature or movies even, or certainly just in the world today. But so there are many principles that Atticus tries to instill in his children, but two of the ones that I kind of want to talk about today are, he really tries to show them that in order to understand someone, you should try to step into their shoes and try to see the world from their perspective and understand where they're coming from. And through that, if you really honestly try that, hopefully you'll gain a better understanding of them as a person and see their humanity a little bit more, and therefore be able to connect with them more. And I think that's such an important thing for us to remember now, when all we see of people so often are just snippets online or on social media. We don't even often see people in person sometimes that we make judgments about. And it's really easy to just view people not as humans with their own pasts and hurts and pains and beliefs. It's easy just to write people off based on one thing they say. And so I think this is really important, just to remember that we have to actually really make an effort to understand each other and not just make snap judgments about people. But the other principle is also just that of courage. And it's really important to stand firm in your convictions and uphold your beliefs and even more important to do so when you will probably lose anyway, or might lose anyway, when there's not a good chance of success, or the people who think differently than you will likely win. That's when it's the most important to stand firm and maintain your fortitude. And that gets demonstrated in many aspects of this novel, but kind of the big set piece for that is the trial of Tom Robinson, where Atticus knows there's such a small chance of success, but he knows what the right thing to do is, and that is to represent Tom Robinson to the best of his ability, whether Tom Robinson is innocent or guilty. He deserves a defense, and and while it's clear to us as readers in the novel that Tom is innocent of what he's accused of, Atticus knows that he has a very slim chance of justice being done in Maycomb when it comes to Tom. But he knows it's the right thing to do to defend him to the best of his ability, and hope and pray and try his hardest to achieve that justice, despite all the ridicule he receives in town and the ridicule his children receive in town, the violence and potential violence that comes to him and his children because of his defense of Tom. All of that doesn't and shouldn't stop him from doing what he knows is right and what he knows is morally the right thing to do. And as a lawyer myself, well, I don't practice criminal law, but To Kill a Mockingbird actually became part of my law school orientation that week before we started our first year. They had us watch the movie in one of our sessions and talk to us about Atticus and how important it was. And I reread the book again around that time as well. But, you don't always have the good client or the best client, but that shouldn't stop you from defending and advocating for someone to the best of your ability, because that's your role, that's your job. One of my favorite parts in this book is part of Atticus's closing argument at the trial. And this is just kind of about the institution of the legal system in general. But he says, "There is one way in this country in which all men are created equal. There is one human institution that makes a pauper the equal of a Rockefeller, the stupid man the equal of an Einstein, and the ignorant man the equal of any college president. That institution, gentlemen, is a court. It can be the Supreme Court of the United States, or the humblest JP court in the land, or this honorable court which you serve. Our courts have their faults, as does any human institution. But in this country, our courts are the great levelers, and in our courts, all men are created equal. I'm no idealist to believe firmly in the integrity of our courts and in the jury system. That is no ideal to me. It is a living, working reality. Gentlemen, a court is no better than each man of you sitting before me on this jury. A court is only as sound as its jury, and a jury is only as sound as the men who make it up. I'm confident that you gentlemen will review without passion the evidence you have heard, come to a decision, and restore this defendant to his family. In the name of God, do your duty." And I really like that passage because it kind of encapsulates a lot of my feelings about the legal system, particularly. I recognize the importance of institutions and that they are needed to create structure and order, but I have no great faith, I'll be honest, in our institutions, because they are made up and operated by and participated in by flawed, sinful human beings who have their own biases and their own prejudices. And as Atticus says, an institution like the courts are only as good as the people that make them up. Institutions give us the potential for great things, but in order to achieve those things, the people that participate in those institutions have to do their part. Things won't go the quote-unquote correct way. Justice won't be done merely because the institution exists. The institution gives us a vehicle to provide justice, but humans and us as people still have to carry it out. We still have to do justice. And in the case of Tom Robinson, they don't. Justice fails him. And, Atticus, I think, knows it's coming, but is still devastated by it. And the scene in the book and in the movie where the trial is over and Tom has been adjudicated guilty and everyone leaves, but the Black community is still in the balcony of the courtroom, and Atticus is the only one left on the floor. He's packing up his things and he starts to walk out, and the Reverend nudges Scout and tells her to get up because her daddy's passing. Is one of the most powerful scenes I've read, or I love it so much. It means so much to me. It makes me cry just thinking about it, because they're doing honor to what Atticus did. Even though he lost, everyone knows that he did the right thing, and they're honoring and respecting that. And that's why it's important to still have courage to do the right thing, because people will see and people will witness, and maybe it's enough to inspire someone else to do the same thing. And I think that's Atticus's great hope. His hope is that this will continue to move the needle. Because the jury was out for a really, really long time when everyone expected them to make a very quick guilty verdict. But they stayed out for hours and hours and hours discussing the case. And so Atticus tries to take that as at least a baby step in the right direction. And I guess we can debate whether or not that's true, but perhaps it is. And to me, it makes it all the more disheartening when Atticus comes to the house to tell Calpurnia that Tom is dead. He's been shot trying to escape the prison he was held in, because even though Atticus told him that they had a chance to win on appeal, Tom couldn't put his faith in those institutions anymore. They failed him. They failed him, and he didn't have enough hope to continue that faith, because how could he? And it's really difficult to lose a client, especially in a manner like that, when they just don't have any hope left, but you're still trying to get justice for them. That's really, really difficult. And that's on this reread of it, now that I've been in practice for about 10 years at this point, that on this reread, that was something that hit me harder personally than it had before when I've read it. But so justice failed Tom Robinson, but what is justice for Boo Radley? So the other kind of big storyline is the children's fascination with Boo Radley, this mysterious reclusive figure, and they've had little interactions from a distance with him throughout the novel, exchanging items in the trunk of a tree and things of that nature, and he has interacted with them in small little ways. but they still kind of have this caricature of him in their minds, even though they've become more favorably disposed to him. But at the end, when the children are attacked by the father of the alleged victim in Tom's case, because he's trying to get back at Atticus, Boo Radley defends the children, comes out of nowhere and defends the children and kills that man. And as the aftermath of the situation is unfolding, a scout gets to meet Boo Radley in the flesh for the first time, and she's confronted with him as a living, breathing human person who is nothing like what she had conjured him up to be in her imagination. And so she's forced to kind of live out trying to understand someone and step into their shoes a little bit and see the world from his perspective and see herself from his perspective, and why he's so shy and withdrawn, and how coming into contact with the world is incredibly difficult for him. He has his own pains and traumas that prevent him from doing that. And when she walks him home back to his house and stands on the porch, she has this moment where she looks back out across the town in the street, and she starts to kind of be able to imagine seeing herself from his eyes. And it just gives her that greater understanding of what his life might be like. And it gives her some empathy for him. But as Atticus is talking to the sheriff after the incident, and Atticus has become convinced that Jem is the one that killed the man, killed Mr. Yule. And it's not true, Boo Radley did, but Atticus hasn't quite realized that. He thinks that Jem did. And Atticus is adamant that this not be swept under the rug just for the sake of shielding Jem from having to deal with a criminal charge of alleged murder in public. He knows it was self-defense truly, and that it'll all end up right for Jem, but as much as he doesn't want Jem to have to go through that, he knows that he has to, because he can't just sweep it under the rug just because he's the lawyer in town and things like that. But the sheriff is trying to explain to Atticus that he's trying to explain to him without explicitly saying it, that Boo Radley was the one that killed Bob Yule, and that putting Boo Radley through a public trial and the town getting word of all of it and participating in all of it and beating down his door about it would be a great injustice to Boo Radley. And Atticus's integrity and morals are really challenged in this, because that's what he lives by. But he has to kind of come to this realization that while the institution of the courts and the law didn't provide justice to Tom Robinson, maybe he can provide justice to Boo by stepping outside of the law and those institutions and stepping outside his set of rules. And that's a really difficult thing to do and really challenges him. And I think that's it presents really interesting questions about, was that the right decision? Was it not? Was there another way for there to be justice for Tom in a different way? Is this really justice for Boo? Should he be brought into the community more, or is it right to leave him where he is? And I think there are better answers to those questions, but I think they're kind of worth talking about. But so there's a whole lot more I could say about this book, but like I said at the beginning, this was not going to be able to be a discussion about every single aspect of this book. There are other people that I know, I'm sure, have talked about many other parts of this book that I didn't today that are worthy of a lot of discussion. But these are just a few parts of it that have meant a lot to me and that stood out to me on this reread. And I don't know, maybe we'll do this again. I think this is a great book for discussion. So if you've never read this book, like, I think, or if you're in a book club with people who haven't read this since high school, it would be a great one to pick up and reread again, I think. But it's one of my favorite novels ever, and I think about it a lot. And I would love for y'all to tell me your thoughts about it in the comments, and to talk about the parts I talked about or the other aspects of it. But I could go on forever talking about all the different things in this, so too much to do here. But I appreciate y'all sticking with me for the parts I did talk about today that are just kind of on my mind at the moment. And I'll talk to all of y'all again soon. Thanks. Bye.